what it is they're saying. So let's say, for instance, you're giving dawah to a non-Muslim, okay? And they say something like, well, you know, you won't be saved unless you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord. What do we normally say? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we say. You know, you're gonna go. Is that the best way?
Yeah.
What could we do? What would be a better way? We could then, what does Allah do? What does Allah do? What did he ask? He asked them a question. So if someone says that, you ask them, put the question back on them. Why do you say that? What evidence do you have in your book? This is just questions. I'm just to make you say that. Or, I hear you Muslims, you're terrorists. Why do you say that?
Bring your evidence.
Bring your evidence for this. Or why did you say that? Because you want them to think about what it is that they are saying. You want them to think about what they're saying. And get them, because most people in that situation, in terms of the kuffar, they don't think at all in terms of their religion because they're told not to think. In the church, you're told not to think. Correct? Well, I know because I came from the church. And we were told, don't think.
Close your eyes and believe.
Close your eyes and believe. I'll tell you this quickly. When I started getting introduced to Islam, I went back to the church because I felt that somewhere the answer to the real question in life, which is, what is the purpose of life? I felt it had to be in religion, but I didn't know which religion that was. All right? But so I went to the church, and then a brother invited me to some Islamic talks, and so I was going back and forth and back and forth. But alhamdulillah, my mind, was opening up. So I started asking the priest some questions. So finally they said, you're asking too many questions. And they asked me to leave. Please leave. Well, they did. They said, you need to leave because you're asking too many questions. Because I was then beginning to think, because when I was going to church before, I wasn't thinking, I just went to church. Mainly because the girls were there, but hey, that's the reality, right? So the point about asking the questions is to get people to think about what it is that they are actually saying. Now let's relate this to fitra in terms of dealing maybe even with Muslims. What is the story of the boy, of the young man who came to the Prophet ﷺ asking about zina?
Zina.
Aha, yes. We know this one, don't we? We know this one. So what did the Prophet say to him? When the boy came to him, what did the Prophet say? What we normally would have said? Astaghfirullah, son. A'udhu billah. What did he say to him?
Would you be pleased?
Would you accept this for your mother?
No.
No. Would you accept this for your sister?
No.
No. What was he appealing to? What was the Prophet ﷺ appealing to in this book?
His nature. His nature.
His nature. His intellect is, well, okay, fine, no problem. But that was a part of it. As far as his intellect, but he thought about that, and based upon his nature, he said, no, I would not want this. So, we talk about what educate means. To educate means to draw out, right? So the Prophet ﷺ was drawing out from this boy what really was already in him. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. And helping him to realize, the error of his desire. Because at that point, the boy was just being overcome by what? Desire. He wanted to fulfill his desire. So when you're faced with that kind of a situation, sometimes it's not because the person is a bad person. The person may be just feeling overcome by their desire. So if they are a good person, if they still have some fitra left in them, inshallah, if it's a Muslim, they have some left. The non-Muslim may be a different story. But then you appeal to their goodness by asking them the question, is this what you would want? We want to practice that, inshallah. Let's see. We might have one more example here.
I have one question.
Okay. All right, that's on that. Can you hold that question? All right, thank you. Let's go to the next one. This one is how to be an active listener. And we talked about that already, making sure that the environment is right. You don't have any really distortions and distractions, etc. Let's go to the next one. Make people right. And actually, making people right, meaning giving people one respect, acknowledging their feelings, and treating the person here from the business context as a customer. But I want to teach you a technique now about how when you enter, how many of you when you're doing dawah, for instance, that you sometimes get in these little debates with people, right? Or at home, or in the masjid. But particularly when you're dealing with someone, outside of your community, or even inside, it doesn't matter. Or people are objecting to what you are telling them, or what you're selling them, so to speak. How do you overcome that objection? How do you overcome objections? Anybody in sales, you should know how to overcome objections. If not, you're going to learn something today, inshallah. Okay. Huh?
Change the topic.
No. Change the topic.
Acknowledge what they are saying. You don't have to agree with it.
That's true. All right, I'm going to teach you something here.
I respect
A
your
method.
opinion, but I disagree.
And that is called, there's a method called the feel, found, felt method of overcoming objections, calming people down. Feel, felt, found. So let's say you're in interaction with someone, you're in dialogue, you're a slight argument, and then, you're trying to get across the point. So what you simply say, listen, I understand how you feel. Now this is trying to have some empathy with the person, not sympathy, empathy. I can't, or maybe you don't fully understand, but you can say, because we cannot as Muslims be deceptive, and we can't lie, correct? So we want to say, you can say, I think I can understand. In whatever words that are true, I think I can understand how you feel. And if you do understand, it's better to say, listen, I understand how you feel. That's the feel part. Now, what you're doing now, you've acknowledged their feelings, right? Because normally when you say to a person, I understand how you feel, that brings them down just a notch. When I say down, not in a bad way, but kind of calms the situation.
Cool it down.
Then you're going to say, if it's true, you can put it in the context of it being true. I felt that way before. Now, if you haven't ever felt that way before, I know of others who felt that way before. Or I can believe other people have felt that way. I'm sure people have felt the same way you felt. Put it in whatever context that is true. But here's what I've found. Or here's what we found. So maybe somebody's saying, they have some really very misunderstanding about Islam. But what we found is this, is that when people have really read the authentic books, when they've really read the good books about Islam, or talked to the really good Muslims, to Muslims, gotten to know the Muslims, people have found that really it's not that way at all. So you can do that with your kids, you can do that with your wife, you can do it with your husband. But this works. You're showing empathy. I understand how you feel. I felt that way before. So in other words, you're saying, you're not the only person that's felt like that. You're not the only one that's held that particular position, an idea. But here's what we found when we went a certain course, when we did things in a certain way. It's called the feel, felt, found method. And if you're in sales, this would be great. Next slide. Now here comes the biggie. One of the biggest issues that I see sometimes we have among us as Muslims is how we give and take advice. This is part of the communication process, isn't it? How we give and we take advice. And we don't do this very well. We don't. Now, look at some of the points here. Make sure your comments are intended to help the recipient. You know, because sometimes we give advice to people, and sometimes it could be, as the Sheikh said this morning, may Allah save us from it, but maybe to show off what we know, you know. So we're going to show off how much Islamic knowledge we know, and we're going to give them their advice. Brother, this is what you should be doing. But we don't understand that sometimes when we're giving advice, it could, depending upon how we give it, it could be very detrimental. Now, where's Sheikh Molid? We talked about understanding who you're talking to, understanding people. We talked about this concept called firasa, right? About understanding people. Knowing your audience. Yes. When the Prophet ﷺ sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal to Yemen, what did he say to him? Yes. That these are the people there. So first teach them, etc., etc., etc. Know your audience. Know how people will take what you're going to give them and what you're going to say to them. And here's the other thing about giving advice. Now, normally when I give this workshop, we have another sheet that talks about the difference between giving advice and minding your own business. Sometimes we get that confused too, don't we? We do. But we'll stick to giving advice today. All right. Now, one aspect of giving advice is to remember is that we don't always have to be the one to give the advice to that particular person. Do we? I don't necessarily have to be the one to give that advice. Because maybe the way in which I communicate may be really different from the way that person receives information. Maybe I have hot buttons with this particular person, so I definitely shouldn't be giving advice to that particular person. Okay? And we have to understand how is a person going to take what we give them? And what is the situation of that particular person? I'm going to give you some examples here. And this is particularly in reference to dawah and to new Muslims. These are real situations. In Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, I think it was, a few years back, there was a lady from the Philippines, accepted Islam. She was married. And after she accepted Islam, as soon as she accepted Islam, the sisters, who was zealous, they ran to her and told her what?
Leave your husband.
You gotta get rid of your husband. They told her that immediately. Now, I don't know all of the rules of this issue at all, so I'm not here to discuss that at all. But what happened? That sister became so distraught. I gotta divorce my husband? That's my husband. He's there with my children. And so she said, if that's the case, I will leave Islam. Alhamdulillah, there was someone there wiser, and they went to him, and the brother came to know of it, and he said to the sisters, listen, I understand. He did the feel found. I understand how you feel. I understand you want this sister to be, you know, do the right thing, etc., etc., etc. But listen, so he put one question to their minds. Would it be better that this sister live in sin for a minute and be Muslim, or leave Islam and go to the hellfire? That's a pretty big point, isn't it? Now, again, I don't know the rules. I admit, I don't know that rule. But if you were faced with that situation and condition, what would you do? Because if that person, because people are different. Some people may be of the mind, you know, yes, I hear and obey, class. But not everybody's at that point at the time that you're talking to them. Correct? It's mighty quiet here now. Now I'm concerned about what I'm saying.
Correct.
All right. But I hope you're thinking about what's being said here.
It's the less of the two evils.
It's the less of the two evils. It's the less of the two evils. Now it's knowing the person. I'm going to give you another situation. Durham, North Carolina. Nazim may or may not remember this. No, he didn't do it. Alhamdulillah. Brother comes to the masjid. He just walks in. Says, I want to be Muslim. Alhamdulillah. We're sitting there. The brother makes shahada. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. He was given the shahada. Then the brother who gave him the shahada asked him for something to give up. The brother was wearing a gold chain. And he said to that brother, the new men came wear gold, you got to give it up. The man had just made shahada. I was sitting there and I saw the look on that brother's face because he was attached, obviously, to his gold chain. Aisha radiallahu anha said, if the people's hearts had not been first attached to the akhirah, they would not have given up their wine and their drinking and fornication and etc. Correct? Did she say that?
Correct.
So how is it that someone who just makes shahada don't even know how to make wudu, has not even made one rak'ah, doesn't even really know what it means to say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, that he still doesn't have his attachments to the dunya? And you can now take his dunya. I have not seen the brother. He reluctantly gave it. Very reluctantly gave it. And I never saw him again. You see what we can do with our tongues? What's another example of this during the time of the Prophet? Somebody giving advice. And the person died. Remember? Yes, Abdul Nasser knows about the wudu. The man had a wound in his head, right?
The brother Sahabi.
Huh?
The brother the Sahabi.
Sahabi.
Yes.
Yes.
He killed
Yes.
him.
So you give somebody wrong advice. If you don't know what you're talking about, you could, in the most extreme case, kill somebody. But in our terms, in our situations here, you may turn somebody away from Islam. So we can't be impatient. We have to understand who we're talking to and measure the situation and understand that they will learn Islam over time and that inshallah, I'll tell you this story. This is personal. I hope you don't mind. When I came into Islam with many habits, and I don't have to name them for you and I won't, but I came with them. And there was another brother who was in my neighborhood, and he had already come to Islam, and he and I ran those same circles. And I said, yeah, well, akhi, how did you do such and such and such? How did you give up such and such and such? Because I want to know, man, how did you do that? He said, alhamdulillah, may Allah reward him, really. He said, don't worry about that now. Don't worry about that now. Just keep coming and being with the brothers. Being with the Jama'ah. The Sheikh talked about that this morning, right? Praying in the Jama'ah. Just come and be with the brothers and pray in the Jama'ah. And as I learned, then I had less and less of a desire for those habits. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increased my iman, alhamdulillah, to get rid of those things. But had he said something else, I don't know. So, understand this. Islam has what? Priorities. Correct? Islam has priorities. So when you're communicating with people, we're still talking about communication here, understand that when you're talking to them and you're conveying to them, understand the foremost priority. All right? So, alhamdulillah. So when we're trying to give advice, make sure that we understand the people that we're giving that advice to and that they are ready and in a position to take the advice that you are giving them. Here's another thing too. This doesn't really relate so much to this, but I just like to share it. Again, of course, I grew up in the masjid in Durham with Nazi and Sheikh Abdul Nasser, so I experienced a lot of things there, of course. I remember once a brother came, He came from another city up north. And anyway, so, and this is about, again, understanding when to do things and when not to do things, because maybe people aren't ready for you to do it, even in terms of matters of the sunnah. Oh, I know I'm getting in trouble now. They say, oh, brother, you're getting in trouble now talking about when not to do the sunnah. Sheikh Ad is really looking at me now. He said, okay, come on, brother, let's see what you're going to say now. Now, this brother, we're standing in the line, right? We're making salah. Correct? Can you hold this for me? So we're making salah. This is Maghrib, right? So, okay, alhamdulillah. Man, and everybody's, we're toe to toe, foot to foot, heel to heel, and, we had the lesson, shoulder to shoulder. I mean, like, we in it. So there was one brother standing next to me who was from the community, and on his left was the brother who was visiting from another community in Philadelphia somewhere. Now, what are we told to do or suggested to do when Shaitan assails you during the salah? You know where I'm going with this, right? What are we told to do? That you could do. You're not commanded to do it, are you? Well, this brother did it. So this brother, the brother that's on the haqq, he was on the haqq. He was of the sunnah. So he turned. We finished the salah, alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Brother, what are you doing, brother? Spitting on me. It was almost a fight in the masjid. And this brother's trying to tell me, Akhi, this is the sunnah, brother. Don't you know this is the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah? We're told this is the sunnah. And that brother was like, I don't want to hear this from you. You spit on me. You spat on me.
Dry cleaner.
Huh?
Dry cleaner.
I don't know if it was Sheikh Uthaymeen or one of the other shuyukh, rahimahullah. He was asked about this kind of an issue. And he said that really, sometimes if the people are not, if they don't know the sunnah, they're not aware of that sunnah, you may create more fitna. You understand? You may create more fitna introducing or trying to implement that sunnah at that time than you may solve a problem.
There's a misunderstanding also if this is the sunnah or not.
Exactly. So that comes back to knowledge, doesn't it? Comes to the person who's doing it and whether or not they have correct knowledge. Okay.
Spitting, brother Muhammad, is different from definitely, okay?
Excuse me, sir?
It's two different terminology in the hadith.
Yes.
He did not say yapsuk. He said, yeah. So the brother, he did not understand what is the sunnah.
Yes, exactly right. I understand. Good point. So, this is a very good point, isn't it?
From the inadequate
Translation or training and understanding.
But a lot of it for sure comes from the people
Translating in such a way.
in Arabic and English.
Exactly. All right, let's skip this one because we don't have any time. Go to the next one. In the back. Okay. Is Ibrahim trying to give you a message here? The brother, it's time to sit down and shut up? All right.
The hint.
All right. This is the last slide, obviously. This is another way here, again, about communication, accentuating the positive. Remember we said that one of the goals of communication is to change behavior. And the Prophet ﷺ, really, he used words in a way to change behavior. Salim said that the Prophet ﷺ said that Abdullah ibn Omar would be, he said there was a group, that they were sitting in a group, and Ibn Omar was in that group. And Salim said that the Prophet ﷺ said, while in the group, while Ibn Omar was there, that Ibn Omar would be the best if he prayed Qiyamul Layl. Now, when we are trying to get somebody to do something, what do we normally say? We make them end up feeling bad. How do we make them feel bad? First of all, the first part of this hadith is actually now what you get taught in some of the business schools and the classes and the management gurus and all of that. that says, oh, I did something. That say that you should always praise people before you criticize them. Right? That you should always praise people before you criticize them. And alhamdulillah, the Prophet ﷺ said he would be the best. But normally what we say, you'd be all right, but you'd be okay, but man, but. What happens when we say but? When you praise somebody and say but, what happens? You wipe away the praise. You negate the praise. Yeah. You tell somebody, you go tell your wife, honey, that was really nice. I like the way you did that. She's waiting for that other shoe to drop. But, what did I do now? The Prophet didn't use this word, but. He said, if. Now, we don't talk like this, do we? And I really see we're doing a class where at time, but we get you to write out how you'd want to say something. If there's someone in your life or somebody you're trying to get something, what would you say to them? How would you say to them, using these kinds of words to get them to actually, no problem, to get them to change. And it is said, and we'll conclude here, don't worry about it, Akhi. It is said that the commentators say that after that comment was made, after the Prophet ﷺ said this, made this comment by Ibn Omar, that Ibn Omar never slept. That he never slept. Meaning that he was always making Qiyam al-Layl. He was always making Qiyam al-Layl. By the way, one last thing. I want to go back to the questioning about asking questions. For those of you that are in sales, it's called probing. Huh?
It's not the right translation. He never slept. He never missed.
He never missed, excuse me. All right, he never missed Qiyam al-Layl. Yeah, exactly. Because obviously he slept. Obviously he slept. But he didn't miss it. But it was a way that the Prophet ﷺ addressed the people, his Sahaba, the people he loved. So try this. Put that, instead of saying but, be careful of when you use the word but. But is used in the Quran, of course. Bal, right? Balak, yeah. To negate something else. That's another story. But in terms of our effort to try to influence and to change and to improve the behavior of people that we're around and that we love, then don't use but. Try your best to eliminate that. And I can tell you, when you start trying to do this, it will sound very strange on your tongue. And that's when you'll realize we don't talk like that. But we should. We don't talk like that. I did this once, really. I did this once with my daughter. And she had the heart in it. It was because why? We become so accustomed in communicating in a certain way that when we're asked and shown a different way, a better way, inshallah, it's difficult for us to make our tongues say something else. All right? So, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you. You've been a good audience. I hope, really, the only goal, my primary goal here, was to give a few strategies and tips and ideas of things that you can actually use to help us in the communication process. This is a long topic, really. A long topic. And finally, to think about, as imams, as students of Islam, to think about this aspect of our lives when we're reading Quran, when we're reading the Sirah, to think about how they apply in our mundane, in our everyday walks of life. That's the idea. Yes, my brother.
Yesterday, the little khutbah about equip yourself before joining the battle.
Yes.
I think in the last ayat of Surah Al-Ghashiyah, أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ and so on and so on. So before making da'wah,
Equip
you have
yourself.
to equip yourself first with the Shara knowledge in order to be effectively deliver the da'wah to others.
Yes. And I will say this too, one other thing about, again, the communication. And let's try to not be so quick to respond. Let's take a moment, if necessary, to pause before we respond or react. Because oftentimes we're just reacting and not responding to what people are saying. Take a moment to think about it, to make sure that the words that you are going to express will flow and be transferred in such a way that it'll be beneficial. Yes, brother. sorry. I will send it to your email. If you give me your email address, I'll be happy to send it to you.
Sheikh Ali, Brother Muhammad, you can send it to Brother Hadley, and he can send it to the CIC.